everyone, and welcome to the December edition of 30/30, the last 30/30 of 2020, and hopefully 2020 will go far, far away into the past. Given the year that we've had, I am very happy that y'all are with me today to talk about all the different things that have gone on over the course of the last 30 days. So let's get into it. What are we going to be talking about today? So we, of course, are going to be talking about Google's December 2020 core update, what we're seeing on our end, what I've heard around the industry, and what my folks have heard around the industry. We're also going to talk about the Core Web Vitals update and how that will only be impacting mobile search, apparently. So that's an interesting conversation we'll have. Google has been testing the zero results pages again. I'll go through that for anyone who doesn't remember that lovely test last year. Talking about how Google does not support nested XML sitemap files. I had someone ask me about this a couple weeks ago, and I found a few other people that were asking about it. We're going to talk about Google Search Console's API updates, and also, as an annual tradition, I will be doing my predictions for next year in 2021, and also judging myself very harshly on how I did for my predictions from last December. So let's get into it because we only have 30 minutes. Number one, Google's December 2020 core update. What a mouthful. But this was a big one. We saw a lot of movement around the industry. And, on December 3rd is when it rolled out. And there is a typo here, apologies. But a second wave rolled out around, December 10th as well. And what we are seeing on our end is a lot, right? Early analysis from our end, and you can see on the right end, you can see SEMrush's, index filter and the spikes. You can also see, Mozcast. But what we were seeing in Conductor, for the most part, is that, the biggest winners, of 2020, prior to this update, such as like Amazon, Pinterest, the CDC, Overstock, New York Times, they and other sites, greatly benefited, during that, during this, and a lot of the reversal, of what they saw in the last time around. So that was something that was interesting, because, after that, all these sites, saw huge, updates, before this update, and then all of these saw a massive decrease. Amazon, we saw a massive decrease in Amazon listings. Also, Lily Ray confirmed this as well, who always does an amazing, amazing breakdown of these updates. Is that Amazon and sites like Pinterest and Overstock, saw a huge, these huge marketplaces saw a huge, decline, in visibility, which is interesting. And, I guess kind of makes, I guess you could say it makes sense, as Google doesn't want, only like aggregators and, because we saw a couple of big aggregators on our side, go down. And I think that's Google recognizing that maybe aggregator sites are not always, the best result for every query. They're great results for certain queries, don't get me wrong. But for a lot of the queries that they were winning on, maybe they weren't the best one. That's kind of how I interpret this and how I saw this. Like seeing Amazon take, I think it was like an 11%, visibility hit, which is a lot. I mean, that's huge when you think about, the visibility of that site. I think that's Google continuing to move towards a better, or Google continuing to move towards, better results, which are, richer results and not 5 or 6 aggregators against a query that maybe a product page should show up for, or maybe, a piece of content or a blog post or an article should show up for. So things of that nature. So that's something that was, something that was, that was interesting. A lot of people around the industry saw big, traffic fluctuations that rolled out, especially after the first wave on, around 12.4. And we saw some sites, move about, 30%. I heard from a lot of my friends that, they had sites, moving anywhere between 20 and 40% up or down, which is insane. When you think about that, I think, that kind of comes back, to the last major update, which was the May 2020 update, which was huge. That was a huge update. And this one seems to be even bigger than that because there were large, when you're talking about 30, 40% shifts, that is a bat crap amount of movement. And so from that standpoint, this seemed to be one of the biggest updates, if not the biggest update of the year. Other analysis of just the rank volatility that we saw. We were looking at by vertical. And you saw a lot of things that were not surprising. And I've kind of reported on this over all of the core updates that a lot of the same things were hurting. A lot of people with the EAT stuff in their content, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. And you saw things in music, in health, in finance, in news, and e-commerce. These are the main. Take music out a little bit, but health, finance, news, and e-commerce. Those were the main verticals that we have seen impacted by all of the core updates over the past year. So this is not surprising at all, both positive and negative. But this one seems just bigger. I think for the May update, the biggest shift that I saw was like an 18% shift up, up or down was the threshold there. Seeing 30-40% shift, that is like 2012 days. That's like penguin and panda days. That's crazy amounts of change. And you shouldn't, in my opinion, when these core updates roll out, you really shouldn't see that much change, like that level of change. But this one, we saw that. So Google really changed a lot this time around. So again, the winners, the losers, all kind of rolled up into the same verticals: health, finance, news, e-commerce. We added music in on this time, although last time in May we saw a lot of music sites and a lot of lyric sites go down. So that's something to consider as well. But really huge update, really, really big update. But those were the main segments that we saw, move, which is very much in line with other SEOs. Like I said, Lily Ray did a really great rundown from Path Interactive. Glenn Gabe, did a nice rundown. I think a lot of his stuff was just him commenting on Twitter, though. But at the end of the day, those are the things that we saw. So a reversal for people who actually saw, who were winners in the last before this update. We saw down. So people, sites like Amazon, Pinterest, CDC, Overstock, New York Times. We saw them reverse and go down. Amazon was huge. I think Amazon actually came back as the biggest loser in a lot of those, lists, which is interesting, which again tells me that Google is looking for, better results than just sending everyone to a page on Amazon.com. But also a lot of these sites were impacted by EAT, content related to that. So, music sites like lyric sites mainly is what we saw. Health, finance, news, which should not be any news to anybody, and then news and e-commerce, right? So when you think about that, a lot of volatility there, crazy volatility actually, but really in the same vein, right? Really in the same vertical, so nothing surprising here. But just, I think the only surprising thing for me was how large the shift was up or down, like 30, 40%. That's crazy. That is a lot of movement. Usually we haven't seen anything really break 20% on our end anyway. I know some people have, but seeing some of our indexes go up and down, that was pretty crazy. That was pretty crazy to see. So again, if you got hit up or down, I would love to hear about it, love to talk about it. Hit me up. But at the end of the day, that's what we're seeing and hearing on the Conductor side. So we will move on to the next one. So moving forward, the Core Web Vitals update, which we have been talking about, we now know is rolling out in May. Apparently, this will only impact mobile search at first. So Barry Schwartz, who always does a great job of catching little tidbits like this and changing on it. An FAQ on the page experience update and a list of that was put out. And Search Engine Roundtable, which is Barry's site, did a nice little rundown of it. Someone from Google put a list together of all the pertinent things. When you get this deck, go and read this. I won't go through all of them because we simply don't have the time. But you can click on that link there, and it takes you to the article. And one of the most notable things that came out of that is that this will only impact mobile search rankings, for now. And that was a little bit shocking and confusing to me. So, and what that means is that, yes, the page experience update that's coming out will, all the factors that you see to the right, and I've shown this graphic the last 3 or 4 months, all of these things, they're saying it will only impact, or at least this update, whatever this update's going to do, will only impact mobile search. I don't really understand this because a lot of the stuff on here we know impacts desktop search as well. We know intrusive interstitials, impacts desktop. We know that, security impacts desktop. And, we know that page speed, impacts desktop. At least we think we do. I thought we did. And, for the most part, this is a little confusing to me why they would only roll it out into mobile and not into desktop as well. I mean, it's not like no one's using the desktop. I'm on my desktop right now. Most of you are probably on a desktop or a laptop right now. So I think at the end of the day, that's a little confusing for me. But at the same time, Google works in mysterious ways, right? So here we are. Who am I to question the Googs? But at the end of the day, a little bit confusing there. But you can see John Mueller confirming this. Barry had asked, so 0 of these factors will be used as a signal for desktop. And he had mentioned that HTTPS is a factor on desktop. Does that change when this launches? John said, no, nothing changes there. These remain relevant. So it's kind of a mixed answer that when I guess whatever this update is, whatever it entails, only will apply to mobile search. That's the only thing it will apply to. So that is what it is. Here we are. So that's something to know. So when you're updating your site, if you're in the midst of updating your site for this update, and just making it better, making it faster, I guess really pay attention to your mobile experience, like you always should have anyway. But it doesn't seem like we'll see any shift on desktop. So when it launches, pay attention to your mobile, your mobile site, the mobile traffic coming from your site, and see how that's impacted, because that's the only thing that should see a shift, if there's any shift at all. Again, I think this is mainly going to be like Mobilegeddon, which is going to be basically a fart. It rolls out and nothing really happens, and it's just Google forced everyone into a better experience. As I said, Google's a thoughtful bully. But at the same time, this is something good to know for everyone, because it does impact everyone. Moving on to something that will hopefully never impact everyone. Someone caught a Google testing out 0 result pages again. So I was going through my daily routine. Consists of me bouncing around through a bunch of blogs. Search Engine Land, Search Engine Roundtable, Marketing Land, Search Engine Journal, and all the sites. And just looking for what's going on, just so I'm in the know. So if people ask me a question, I can have an answer. And this is one that I actually came across this weekend, which was really funny because I caught it and I was like, oh my God, I'm like, I hope this is only happening for the calculator, because what I did, I was trying to convert something from pounds. Actually, no, I was trying to convert something from Argentinian pesos to USD for no particular reason. And I got when I was on my phone, the only thing that showed up was the conversion calculator, and then I saw the show all results. And if everyone remembers, Google did this back in 2019. They tested the no results. And if you remember, like if you Googled something like just the word time, all that would come up was the one result for what time it was, where you were, wherever your IP was telling Google you were. And that pissed off a lot of people, namely Time Magazine. Who saw a huge issue, with organic, and everyone was like, "Holy crap! Why are you doing this?" Stefan Bajayo and I, our chief evangelist, we actually were Googling different whiskeys that were coming up, and we were going back and forth with the search liaison, Twitter handle on this. Danny was running it. I think we were talking to Danny at the time. And he was kind of coming back and saying, yes, we're keep giving us feedback. We're doing this. This was a terrible test. And seeing this again, and I kind of understand it for the calculator, that's fine. But this is very scary, because when this thing first launched, this was a really bad experience in my opinion. And I didn't like it. And I know every SEO on the planet, and really every person that I talked to was like, yeah, that's weird. I want to see more results. This was just something, I understand the point here, and maybe it's just for the calculator, and that's fine, or for calculations, which totally makes sense. But at the same time, underneath these calculators are percentage calculators and sites like that who definitely will be impacted by this. I use a site for percentage for percentage calculations that I've been using for years that usually shows up right underneath the calculator for just about everything. That site will be impacted by this. So, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this. I hope they do not do this. But at the same time, another interesting thing that I noticed over the course of this, because this article I actually saw on Search Engine Roundtable, and I don't know if anyone's seen this, but I am seeing passage-based ranking all over the place now. And it's interesting, when you click into the results, it highlights the passage for you, and it takes you there. It jumps to that part of the page and highlights the passage of what you Googled. So I am seeing this everywhere. Once I saw this, I started Googling a bunch of other crap, and I see it everywhere now. I'm seeing the passage-based ranking everywhere, and I gotta admit, guys, I love it. I think it's great. I think it's one of the coolest features and one of the coolest experiments that they've run in a really long time. And this I find very helpful. I think that this is very, very helpful and will be very, very helpful for people. I don't know if anyone else has seen it out there in the wild, but this is something that I saw that was super cool, and I'm happy that they're doing it. And I think it's going to be a different world for us as SEOs to explore, or people who own SEO to explore, is how does this impact, how does this impact all, like search? How many searches is this going to show up for? Like I had Googled Google assessing zero results again. That's a pretty specific term, so I understand why they showed up. I have not seen it on any broad terms, which is a good thing. I don't want this on broader terms, but I do want it on very specific terms. And I think it's a whole new world for us to work in, and a whole new opportunity for our customers, for our sites, for our brands. And I'm really excited about it. It was a very good experience that I had, and I just started noticing it about a week ago. So I think it's pretty cool. Next one. So Google does not support nested XML sitemap index files. Someone actually asked me about this, and I think this article probably spurred that question, because this is not something that a lot of people talk about, but or at least it doesn't come up that often when I'm talking to customers or when I'm talking to other folks. So an SEO named Ryan Siddle, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right, asked John Mueller of Google whether or not Google supported nested XML index files. For anyone who does not know, a nested sitemap index file is a sitemap index file containing sitemap index URLs. And so basically it's an index file of index files. And for the most part, people with very, very large sites typically use nested, index file, sitemap files like that to keep it all, organized. Apparently, Google does not support this, which is surprising because it seems like something that Google would support. Why not? It doesn't seem like a big deal, but they do not support nested sitemap index files. So if you use them, then I guess that it probably won't hurt you too much. I don't know if it will quote unquote hurt you, but it's definitely something that it's good to know that Google does not support this. But again, according to Mueller, they do not support this, but Google does have guidance. Google has guides for splitting up large sitemap files. Most people don't have sites large enough to necessitate this. This is like for Ancestry, or sites of that size, of that magnitude, sites like Amazon, things of that nature, for sitemap files. You really have to have a ton of pages to really necessitate, or at least convince me that you need a nested sitemap index file. But Google does have guidance. If you do have a large site, you don't know what to do, or you think that your sitemaps are not set up properly, hit me up. I'd be happy to talk to you. But also, they have you can click here when you get the presentation. You can go here, and Google has a whole article about this, has guidance about everything and what to do. But also, if you need help, you want direct help, call me. I'm happy to help you. Hit me up on my email, reinhardt@conductor.com, and we can talk about it. But again, you would need a really, 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 really big site to really necessitate a sitemap index file, a nested sitemap index file. But at the same time, if you need help with sitemaps in general, I'm always here to help. So moving on, doing okay on time, got to move a little quicker. So Google Search Console API has been updated, and it has fresher data and more filters. This is super cool. I don't know if anyone read through all the updates. There's you can go to the Webmaster Forums, and there's a lot of information there that I was reading through. Again, Barry Schwartz did a really good rundown. This is a very search engine roundtable heavy presentation today, but he did a really good breakdown of the important things to know for everybody. And just to make sure everyone understands, this is an update to the API. The Google Search Console API has more data, fresher data, and more filters. So one of the first things that they have is fresher performance data. So if everyone remembers, back in September of 2019, Google Search Console had fresher performance reports, which means that they updated the data more often, and it was better. And then then that data was added to Discover reports in last year, this month last year, December of 2019. All that data before was not available through the API. Now that data is available through the API, so that's a big update. Another thing that we got access to back in July is that we were given the ability to filter performance report by news results, and what that looks like. That data is now available through the API, which is awesome, because that's something that I do use for a couple of customers all the time. Domain property support and sitemap back last year in February 2019, Google added domain property verification, if you remember that, so that you could, if you had domain property, you could verify everything underneath one domain property. You didn't have to do it on the domain URL level. The Sitemaps API now supports domain properties. So now you can actually add, query, and delete sitemaps on your domain properties through the API, which makes it a lot easier for people who manage a lot of domains, which is super cool, or has a lot of updates to their sitemaps that are very specific, like a nested sitemap index file, which they don't, which of course they do not support. And then, so that is now available to do through the API, which is super cool, and more options. And then they also updated the discovery, the Webmaster Discovery document. So if anyone who doesn't know, you can query, the API, using like an external API library, directly, right, and then pull things out of it, right? You will need to update your API calls for this one to include like the designated changes. You can find that in the article, and I would actually go to the Webmaster Forums and go to the official, the official article from Google. There's a lot of changes that you have to make this one particularly work. I've never done this before, and I'm not saying that, and so I don't want to say I have. So this one I don't understand as fully as I would like. I'm learning, but for the most part, this is something that has changed as well. Just to get that out to you. Okay, so moving into my favorite part of the year, predictions. So I predict things at the end of every year. For 2020, I predicted 4 things. And right now I use this time to reflect and judge myself very harshly and somewhat unfairly. So let's see how I did. So the first thing I said was the kitchen sink approach will continue to prove itself. I am marking this one as correct. And for anyone who doesn't know what the kitchen sink approach is, that means that you are not just trying to do one thing in SEO to your site, right? You're doing everything. You're making your site better from a technical standpoint, from a content standpoint. You have a whole plan around it, right? It's the kitchen sink. You're throwing the kitchen sink at it. You're not just working in one area. You're working at all areas. Too many people have a myopic view of their sites and how they approach their sites. And you need to look at your site as an overall entity, especially moving forward, right? And I'll get to one of my predictions for next year. But that's something to think. So I'm going to mark this one that I was totally correct on. The next one, zero-click searches will continue to rise as Google becomes the destination. Now, unfortunately, JumpShot is no longer in business. And where, like Rand Fishkin used to do these really great, analyses of zero-click searches, which is, someone comes to Google and doesn't actually click on anything, doesn't go to your site. They get the answer on Google. And that was very much on the rise, most of the year until JumpShot, shut down. And that data isn't really readily available anymore. At least that's where, where people were doing those analyses. I can't fathom that this went down. And though I can't prove it, everybody, I'm going to mark this one as I was right. I am going to guess that zero-click searches they did continue to rise technically through the year, but then we lost insight into that after JumpShot had to shut down over privacy concerns. But I'm going to say that this one is correct as well. Moving on to the next one. Voice search will continue to be a distraction, but will have some form of measurement. Man, I was half right on this one. Voice search continues to be a distraction to people, in my opinion. But unfortunately, there is no form of measurement. So that's why it's a distraction. People want to do better with voice search. And listen, we, in Conductor, we have a filter for voice search, and you should know what questions that people are asking. And we know that people get results on Google Home, and we know that people get results on Alexa. But for the most part, there is still no way to measure that, and there's still no real way to measure that outside of surveys. There's nothing in Google Analytics. There's no data in Search Console. So I'm going to mark this one as half right. So I was half right on this one, but I was wrong that we would have some form of measurement now, which I was wrong about. So I'll reflect on that one later today. And then my last one, which I knew was wild, I said, I'm still convinced they're going to do this, but I had said that at some point paid results will be tested throughout the SERP, not just on the top and bottom. I was dead wrong about this, and I'll reflect on that. But at the end of the day, I still think Google will do this in the near future, but I thought maybe this year they would do it, but I was wrong about this. And, hey, you can't win them all, right, everyone? So moving on to 2021, what do I think is going to happen? One of the big things is optimizing your entire digital presence will become a bigger focus for many companies. What does this mean? It's not just about your .com, right? It's not just about your site. It's not just about the SERPs and how they do your main domain. It's about your YouTube channel. It's about, how you show up in image search. It's about how you show up on other sites like Quora, and just your overall resume online, right? If someone Googles your brand name, a lot of different sites are going to come up. Your Facebook site's going to show up. Your LinkedIn profile is going to show up. Your site's going to show up. You're going to have a lot of different entities show up that represent your brand. Does that tell a good story? And this is a question I've been asking a lot of our customers. If you looked at your whole digital presence right now, would you be happy with the story that SERP result told? And that's been an interesting conversation. I think that that's going to continue to build momentum over the next year. I also believe that Google will continue to figure out how to get away from links being such a big signal. I feel that all these experience updates, all these core updates and things of that nature have been moving towards moving links down the list, right? I am not saying that links will not still be important. Everyone knows my stance on link building. I'm not going to get into that now. But we all know that links are important. So I think links continue to move down the list in importance. Now, again, that's an argument point, which is for another time and another place. But at the same time, I do think that all the updates, everything that Google has been doing over the last few years, that tells me that they're trying to move away from this. And that's where we're at. And I think that we're going to continue to see that and have something more definitive next year. I believe that Apple will enter the search market in some way. Or, some way, like Apple will enter our space, will enter our industry in a bigger way. And I think we're going to see that. Will it be a search engine? Like we covered on the last 30/30, will it be something else? I don't know, but I think we will see more from Apple in search. And then, of course, this one I am almost certain about is that the Jets will somehow screw up getting Trevor Lawrence and somehow draft a defensive back with the #1 pick in the NFL draft this year. So that is my prediction for next year. And with that, everyone, remember, we're talking about algorithm updates, but the only algorithm that matters is the heart and mind of your customer. If you create things that they love, they will think about you often. So always think about that. Always think about your customer. We have a question, but I just want to say, everyone, thank you so much for spending your very, very important time with me. As I say every single month, this is my favorite part of my job, and I wouldn't be able to do this without you. 2020 has been one of dumpster fire of a year, but for so many reasons, I am looking forward to 2021, and one of the main ones is being able to spend 30 minutes every month with all of you. So I thank you so much for that. And with that, I will get into a couple of questions here before we sign off. And for the most part, should we trust Google and rely on the core Vital update only impacting mobile, especially if on desktop we have page speed issues? That is a great question, and my answer is no, you should not trust Google. I think that this will impact desktop eventually, and I think that mobile thing will be for a very short period of time, and then all of a sudden they'll say, oh yeah, but 3 or 4 months later they'll say, oh yeah, we rolled this out for desktop too, or we're going to roll this out for desktop, but give you absolutely zero time. So I think that no matter what, all of your sites should be on the same URLs anyway. No one should really have a separate mobile site anymore. But at the same time, I do not think you should trust Google. I think that you should prepare for desktop as well. And then last question we have time for, should we have expected to see volatility on our site? Anything specific we should be watching for? Yes, by now you should have seen volatility up or down, right? You should have seen volatility because this thing rolled out on the 3rd, and you should have seen something with your data on the 4th, and then it rolled out again, or another wave of it rolled out on the 10th. We are well beyond that. So if you think that if you are worried that will I get hit, did I get hit, if you would have seen volatility by now. So go to your analytics and look to see if you're up or down. Go, however you're tracking rank, go see if you're up or down. You would have seen volatility by now. And with that, everybody, thank you so, so much. As I say, and I'll say it again, this is my favorite part of my job. I wouldn't be able to do it without all of y'all. Happy holidays to everybody, no matter what holiday you're celebrating. I'm thankful for all y'all, and I hope you have an amazing holiday season. Thank you all so much, and we will see you in 2021.